James Fitzjames was born in London on the 27th of July 1813 and baptised at St Marylebone Parish Church on the 24th of February 1815. He was the illegitimate son of diplomat Sir James Gambier, a relative of the Botham family who lived at Hazelwood. In 1838, Lydia Botham bequeathed Hazelwood to her nephew, Charles Samuel Gambier, who was a cousin of James Fitzjames. The house was destroyed by fire in 1908 and is now the location of the Hunton Park Hotel. At the age of 2, James was adopted by the Reverend Robert Conyngham and his wife Louisa, who lived at the manor house on Gallows Hill Lane. They are thought to have been his uncle and aunt. He enjoyed a very happy childhood in Abbots Langley and formed a lifelong bond with Louisa and Robert's son, William Conyngham. James entered the Royal Navy as a volunteer at the age of 12, but returned to Abbots Langley 3 years later to complete his education. In the 1830s, Robert Conyngham moved to a large country house called Rose Hill, where the Gadeview Flats are today, and James Fitzjames returned to the Navy as a volunteer. Between 1831 and 1834, James served as a midshipman in the Mediterranean on HMS St Vincent and HMS Madagascar. His promotion through the ranks of the Royal Navy was rapid, and between 1834 and 1838 he served as a mate on HMS Euphrates and HMS Tigris, and as a gunnery lieutenant on the HMS Ganges. In 1841, he saw action on HMS Cornwallis as a lieutenant during the First Opium War in the South China Sea, where in 1842 he was wounded by a musket ball through his arm and back. During his recovery, he stayed for several months in Hong Kong, and in 1842 he was promoted to captain of HMS Clio. In 1845, he was recruited to join the Franklin expedition to search for the Northwest Passage from Baffin Bay in the North Atlantic to the Beaufort Sea in the Pacific. The expedition, led by Sir John Franklin, set sail from Greenhithe in Kent on the 19th of May 1845, with Francis Crozier in command of HMS Terror and James Fitzjames in command of HMS Erebus. They never returned. In 1845, they anchored in Baffin Bay, waiting for the ice to break up so that they could resume their journey. This was to be their last contact with the outside world. Their initial attempt was to force a way through the ice of the Wellington Channel, and when this failed, they overwintered off Beechey Island, where 3 crew members died and were buried. In 1846, they reached the coast of King William Island, where once again they became icebound. They were so close to success, with only the channel south of Victoria Island to navigate before reaching the Beaufort Sea, but the ice held them captive for 2 more years. Evidence of what happened to the expedition during that time was established with the discovery in 1859 of a cairn on King William Island containing a document known as the Victory Point Note. The first statement, in James Fitzjames' handwriting, describes the abortive attempt to navigate the Wellington Channel and their winter trapped in the ice. A year later, more was added to the note, indicating that circumstances were becoming desperate. Then, on the 25th of April 1848, a supplement was added by James Fitzjames, stating that Sir John Franklin died on the 11th of June 1847, and total loss by deaths had been 9 officers and 15 men. Captain Crozier added that they would head south the next day on foot. The remaining 105 men dragged boats full of supplies on sleds heading for Back River. Later that season, Inuit natives saw the bodies of 35 men in the mouth of the river, with indications of cannibalism. This news was dismissed out of hand by Charles Dickens, who wrote, The noble conduct of such men outweighs by the weight of the whole universe the chatter of uncivilized people. On the 9th of September 2014, it was announced by the Canadian Prime Minister, Stephen Harper, that HMS Erebus had been discovered on the seabed near Crampton Bay, and 2 years later, in September 2016, HMS Terror was found off the coast of King William Island. It is thought that both ships had drifted in the ice before sinking. In 1992, archaeological sites were discovered on the shores of Erebus Bay, where the remains of at least 13 of Franklin's sailors were found scattered near the surface. Using DNA analysis, researchers from the University of Waterloo in Ontario have managed to identify 6 of the remains, including those of James Fitzjames, whose bones show evidence of cannibalism. 9 years before his ill-fated journey, James Fitzjames' uncle, Robert Conyngham, died, and he was buried under a walnut tree in St. Lawrence Churchyard, Abbots Langley. His memorial and any record of his final resting place have been lost, but during maintenance work in October 2025, a brick chamber was discovered alongside the east wall of the church in the location where a tree is depicted in a 19th century watercolour of the church. A photo taken inside the vault revealed that it is full of rubble, and there is no way of telling whether it contains a burial. Here on Beech Island in the Wellington Channel are 3 graves from the lost Franklin expedition and a 4th from a later search party. But the remains of many of the men, including the body of Sir John Franklin himself, continues to elude us, as does the final resting place of Robert Conyngham in St. Lawrence Churchyard. The story of James Fitzjames, his early life, and his service on the Franklin expedition is painstakingly being pieced together by archaeologists, researchers, and historians, and there is much more to tell. For more information, follow the link in the description.